Now, it's the result that every investor was dreading. Gustavo Petro, a former urban guerrilla who once spent time in jail for his political beliefs, has won Colombia's presidential election, and it is expected that he will bring in the most left-wing government in the country's history. Now, just to give an idea of who we are dealing with, he was a member, Gustavo Petro, of the M19 guerrilla group in the 1980s, and he was also arrested for illegal arms possession. Now, the business community, obviously, in Colombia is not best pleased. Petro's radical call for an overhaul of Colombia's economic model has really spooked investors. I think what we could also see is significant capital flight from Colombia, as actually happened in Peru with the election last year. And I think as well, ratings agencies such as Moody's and Fitch are going to downgrade Colombia. Now, Petro's policy proposals include a ban on oil exploration, open pit mining, and fracking. And this is in a nation that relies on fossil fuels for about half its export revenue. And this is going to be a problem for the country. The country is likely to become poorer as a result. And he has also pledged wholesale land reform, a wealth tax on the largest 4,000 forges in the country. And he also wants to repeal laws from the last 20 years that liberalized the labor market. So again, this is very much a Marxist reform. Now, his tax reform plans, he says, aim to raise over $10 billion a year, mainly by imposing levies on company dividends, offshore assets, and large rural estates. So we can see where he's going with this, and I would say now you should absolutely stay out of the investment market in Colombia, whether you're investing in shares or real estate. And it's a shame because Colombia actually was surging out of the pandemic with one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America. So if we take the first quarter of 2022, Colombia's output expanded at an annual rate of 7.5%, and that's very, very good performance. But this now has come to an end, and what we're likely to see is more an economic model which is based on Chavez Maduro in Venezuela. And I believe too, Gustavo Petro actually went to Chavez's funeral, if I remember correctly. And this is a worry because we've seen what's happened in Venezuela. Venezuela has become an extremely poor country, and the same could happen to Colombia. Now, I hope this will not happen. I don't think it will happen, but we see where the country is veering. And indeed, Venezuela is so bad that over 1.5 million immigrants have gone from Venezuela to Colombia, which was considered a free market economy, a liberalized market. But this, unfortunately, now is no longer going to be the case. And in recent days, since the election, we've seen the Colombian peso fall quite a bit against the US dollar. Now, even before this election result, things were happening in Colombia, like there was a cracking down on the Airbnb market. So that also was a negative when it came to investing in real estate, and taxes are not particularly low in Colombia, although I believe now they will rise a lot with this left-wing government. But if we take, for example, an individual working in Colombia at the higher end, the income tax progressed to nearly 40%. So definitely not a low taxation country, but not a particularly high taxation country either. But also, we've seen the peso go down, But even if we take a 5-year period, 5 years ago, the US dollar bought you 3.05 Colombian pesos. It now buys you around 4.05. So I know some of this has happened because of the election, but even before this election, the US dollar had been appreciating against the Colombian peso. So even if you'd invested with higher growth, you would have lost some money in this market as a result of currency. So there was always a currency risk, and a fairly significant one in Colombia. Also, the debt levels had been rising. Now, in 2012, the total government debt to GDP was just over 32.5%, but it has risen to well above 60%. So this did not augur well anyway before the elections, although it is a lot lower than most Western European countries and the state, but it had been going on the wrong side anyway. And also, if we take cities like Cartagena, Medellin and Bogota, they progressed a lot, but they do suffer from pollution. And although there has been a lot less crime in Colombia, it's still not the safest country in the world. And also yields, for example, if you bought property in Bogota, yields were not particularly good at around 4%, but they were a lot higher in Medellin. There you had more opportunity. Now, what I would say as well, going back to GDP growth, what I liked about Colombia though, and I think it could have been a place to diversify your portfolio. So let's say you owned a series of property abroad, you could have added Colombia to that, perhaps a property in Medellin. Because if we look at the GDP growth from 2010 to 2019, it's been pretty good. It's ranged from 1.36% to 6.95%. And only in one of those years, when it was 1.36%, was growth below 2%. So it's been growing really, really, really well. And also, what I liked about Colombia in particular, let's say investing in the real estate market, was that the population, in particular in Bogota, was growing. So currently it's 11.3 million, and it will grow, it's forecast to grow to 12.75 million in 2035. Now that's very good, and that's good for the real estate market. And although prices have gone up, they're still very reasonable in Colombia. And Medellin as well, the population will grow. It's forecast to grow from 4.1 million to 4.48 million. So not bad either there. And population was also going to grow in Cartagena. So I think if these elections had gone the other way, what I would have said is that Colombia potentially would have been good for somebody who wanted to diversify their portfolio. But I'm afraid as the things stand, this is no longer the case. I have to be honest with you. If I was invested in Colombia, it could be time now to sell. If you're thinking about investing either in shares or more likely in the real estate market, quite honestly, I would absolutely stay out of this. And it's sad because think Europe. Gustavo Petro is a lot worse than anybody could be in, let's say, Europe. So for those of you who live in Europe, think of Podemos. This is a much worse case scenario than Podemos in Spain. So for that reason, please stay out of this market. Anyway, that's it for today. I would love to know your thoughts, and I will see you very soon on the next video.